Hello, everyone. This is a story about a complex web of infidelity and revenge leads to shattered relationships and hard-earned lessons about trust, forgiveness, and the enduring consequences of betrayal. John sat at his desk, the flickering light of his computer screen reflecting off his glasses. The bustling city outside his office window was a stark contrast to the silence inside. He sighed, thinking of his wife, Emily, and their strained relationship. Emily was a beautiful woman, intelligent and vivacious, but lately she had become distant, preoccupied with her thoughts. Emily, on the other hand, was restless. Her days were filled with mundane routines, and her nights with a growing emptiness. She had met Mark, a charismatic and ambitious man working under John at a company event. Their connection was instantaneous, and soon they were sharing stolen moments and secretive glances. Their affair began innocently enough. A coffee here, a lunch there, until it escalated to late-night rendezvous and passionate encounters. Emily felt alive in Mark's arms, a stark contrast to the cold distance she felt with John. Mark was attentive, caring, and made her feel desired. John started to notice the change in Emily. She was more secretive, often texting late at night, and her excuses for coming home late seemed flimsy. His suspicions grew, and the seed of doubt began to take root in his mind. The once warm and loving atmosphere at home had turned icy, with awkward silences replacing their usual conversations. Emily's affair with Mark grew more intense with each passing day. They would meet in hidden corners of the city, their passion burning brighter with each secret kiss and touch. Emily knew it was wrong, but the thrill and excitement of being with Mark overshadowed her guilt. He made her feel alive, something she hadn't felt in years. John, meanwhile, couldn't shake off his suspicions. Emily's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. She was often lost in thought, and her explanations for her absences were becoming more implausible. The trust that once formed the foundation of their marriage was crumbling, replaced by a growing sense of betrayal. One evening, as John was working late in his office, he decided to confront Emily about her behavior. He couldn't continue living in the shadow of his doubts. He needed answers. "Emily, we need to talk," John said, his voice strained. Emily looked up from her phone, startled. "What is it, John? I can't ignore it anymore. You've been distant? Secretive? What's going on?" John's eyes searched hers for any hint of the truth. Emily hesitated, then looked away. "John, I don't know how to say this." John's heart pounded in his chest. He knew what was coming, but he needed to hear it from her. "Just tell me, Emily. I deserve to know." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. "I've been seeing someone else. His name is Mark. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did." John felt a cold wave of shock wash over him. The confirmation of his worst fears left him numb. "Mark? My subordinate Mark?" Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, John. I'm so sorry." The days that followed were a blur of pain and anger for John. He couldn't believe that Emily, the woman he had loved and trusted, had betrayed him with Mark, a man he had mentored and trusted with his business. The betrayal cut deep, and John struggled to keep his emotions in check. Unable to let it go, John hired a private investigator. The evidence came in the form of photographs and videos, each more damning than the last. John's heart shattered as he watched the footage of Emily with Mark. The confrontation that followed was explosive. Emily denied it at first, but the evidence was irrefutable. "Why, Emily? Why him?" John's voice was filled with pain. "I didn't mean for it to happen, John. It just did," Emily replied, tears streaming down her face. John's world had been turned upside down. He couldn't bear to look at Emily, let alone share the same space with her. The woman he thought he knew had become a stranger, and their once happy home was now filled with tension and bitterness. Fueled by betrayal and a desire for revenge, John turned his attention to Sarah, Emily's younger sister. Sarah was kind, beautiful, and had always admired John. He began to spend more time with her, offering a shoulder to cry on and slowly weaving his way into her life. Their relationship grew from comforting hugs to passionate nights. Sarah's husband, Tom, was oblivious to the affair. He trusted Sarah and considered John a good friend. John's plan was working perfectly, and he relished the thought of Emily's reaction when she found out. John's seduction of Sarah started with innocent gestures, a comforting hand on her shoulder, a sympathetic ear during her moments of distress. Sarah, feeling neglected by Tom and overwhelmed by her own marital problems, found solace in John's company. It wasn't long before their relationship turned physical. The first night they spent together was electric. The intensity of their passion took both of them by surprise. As they lay tangled in sheets, catching their breath, Sarah looked at John with a mix of confusion and desire. "John, what are we doing?" she whispered. John looked at her, his expression unreadable. "We're finding comfort in each other, Sarah. We both need this." Sarah nodded, unable to deny the truth in his words. She knew it was wrong, but the connection she felt with John was undeniable. Mark, feeling the weight of guilt, confessed to Emily. He couldn't continue living with the lie. Emily was torn. She loved Mark, but the guilt of betraying John gnawed at her. Meanwhile, Sarah discovered John's true motive and felt a deep sense of betrayal. "How could you, John? Was this all just to get back at Emily?" Sarah's voice quivered with hurt. "It started that way, but I didn't expect to fall for you," John admitted, realizing the depth of his own deception. Sarah felt her world crumbling. She had been a pawn in John's game of revenge, and the realization was devastating. She couldn't look at John without feeling a mixture of love and hatred. Mark's confession to Emily added another layer of complexity to the situation. Emily was already grappling with her own guilt, and Mark's admission only made things worse. She didn't know how to face John, knowing that her actions had shattered their marriage. Tom eventually discovered the affair. He confronted Sarah and John in a fit of rage. The confrontation was chaotic, with all parties hurling accusations and revealing secrets. Emily, caught in the middle, felt her world collapsing. "You destroyed our family, John! Was it worth it?" Tom shouted, his face red with anger. "This isn't just on me. We all played a part in this mess," John replied, his voice cold and unfeeling. Emily, seeing the destruction her actions had caused, broke down. "I'm sorry, John. I'm so sorry." The room was filled with tension and heartbreak. The once clear lines between right and wrong were now blurred, and the consequences of their actions were painfully evident. The aftermath was devastating. John and Emily's marriage was beyond repair. Sarah and Tom's relationship was irreparably damaged. Mark, ridden with guilt, distanced himself from Emily. Each character faced their own downfall, their lives shattered by betrayal and revenge. John moved out of the house he had shared with Emily, unable to bear the memories of their life together. Emily, left alone, struggled to come to terms with her actions and the consequences they had wrought. Sarah and Tom, despite their efforts, couldn't rebuild the trust that had been destroyed. Mark, haunted by his role in the affair, left the company and moved to another city, hoping to start anew. The lives they had once known were gone, replaced by a painful new reality. Months later, John sat alone in his apartment, reflecting on the events that had transpired. He realized that his desire for revenge had cost him everything he held dear. Emily, now living alone, grappled with her own guilt and regret. Sarah and Tom attempted to rebuild their lives separately, scarred by the betrayal. In the end, there were no winners. The tangled web of infidelity and deceit had left everyone with the worst possible outcome. Trust, once broken, could never be fully restored, and the cost of their actions was a lesson learned too late. John sighed, staring out at the city lights. He knew that the road to healing would be long and difficult, but he also knew that he had to face it. There was no going back, only forward, and he hoped that someday they could all find some measure of peace. John's days blended into each other as he tried to find some semblance of normalcy in his new life. The apartment felt empty and lifeless compared to the home he had once shared with Emily. Work became his refuge, a place where he could lose himself and forget the turmoil of his personal life. But even there, the memories of the past haunted him. One evening, while sipping a glass of whiskey, John received a call from Sarah. It had been weeks since they last spoke, and hearing her voice stirred a mix of emotions within him. "John, can we meet? There's something I need to talk about," Sarah said, her voice tinged with hesitation. "Sure, Sarah. Where do you want to meet?" John replied, his curiosity piqued. They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe downtown. When John arrived, he saw Sarah sitting at a corner table, looking pensive. As he approached, she looked up and gave him a weak smile. "Hi, John," she greeted him softly. "Hey, Sarah, how have you been?" John asked, taking a seat opposite her. "I've been better," Sarah admitted. "Tom and I are still trying to work things out, but it's hard. Trust is a fragile thing." John nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I know. I've been doing a lot of thinking too." Sarah took a deep breath, as if gathering her thoughts. "John, I need to apologize for everything. I should have seen through your motives, but I was blinded by my own feelings. I let myself be used, and I hurt Tom in the process." John looked at her, feeling a pang of guilt. "Sarah, I was wrong. I used you to get back at Emily, and in doing so, I hurt you and Tom. I'm truly sorry." Silence hung between them, heavy with unspoken regrets. Finally, Sarah spoke again. "We can't change the past, but maybe we can learn from it. I hope you find peace, John." John nodded. "You too, Sarah. Take care of yourself." As they parted ways, John felt a sense of closure. He knew that forgiveness was a long road, but taking the first step was a start. Emily, living alone in the house that once buzzed with life, found herself lost in memories. The silence was deafening, and the loneliness unbearable. She missed John, missed their life together, but she knew that she had shattered their bond beyond repair. One day, she received a letter from Mark. It was a simple note expressing his regrets and hopes that she would find happiness. Emily read it with mixed emotions, realizing that while their affair had brought excitement, it had also brought ruin. Deciding to make amends, Emily reached out to John. She wasn't looking for reconciliation, but for a chance to apologize and perhaps find some closure. They met at a park, a neutral ground, where they could talk without the weight of their past bearing down on them. "John, thank you for meeting me," Emily began, her voice trembling slightly. John nodded, his expression guarded. "What did you want to talk about, Emily?" "I wanted to apologize. For everything. I know I hurt you deeply, and I regret it every day," Emily said, her eyes filling with tears. John looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. "I appreciate that, Emily. It doesn't change what happened, but it's good to hear." They talked for a while, sharing their thoughts and feelings. By the end of their conversation, both felt a sense of relief. They knew that moving forward would be difficult, but acknowledging their mistakes was a step in the right direction. Months passed, and the wounds from the past slowly began to heal. John immersed himself in his work, finding solace in his achievements. He even started writing again, using his experiences as a source of inspiration. Sarah and Tom, despite the challenges, decided to give their marriage another chance. They attended counseling sessions and worked hard to rebuild their trust. It was a long and painful process, but they were determined to make it work. Emily, too, found a way to move forward. She joined a support group where she met others who had gone through similar experiences. It helped her come to terms with her actions and find a path to forgiveness. One day, while walking through the park, John ran into Sarah and Tom. It was an awkward encounter at first, but soon they fell into easy conversation. There was no animosity, only a shared understanding of the complexities of life. "How are you, John?" Tom asked, genuinely curious. "I'm doing better, thanks." "Writing again," John replied with a smile. "That's great to hear," Sarah said. "We should catch up sometime, all of us." John nodded, feeling a sense of closure. "I'd like that." As time went on, each of them found their own way to heal. The past remained a painful memory, but it no longer defined their lives. They had all learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and the consequences of their actions. John published a book based on his experiences, and it received critical acclaim. It was a cathartic process for him, allowing him to process his emotions and find peace. Emily continued to attend her support group and eventually started volunteering, helping others who were going through similar struggles. It gave her a sense of purpose and fulfillment. Sarah and Tom's marriage grew stronger as they navigated their way through the aftermath of betrayal. They learned to communicate better and cherish their relationship. If you like our stories, please remember to subscribe to our channel so that I can push better stories to you in the future.